There is a chapter in the Bible that feels out of place. It feels too detailed, too precise, too intentional. It reads like an eyewitness account of a crucifixion. Yet it was written nearly 700 years before Jesus was born. It is not in the New Testament. It is not written by an apostle. It is not a gospel narrative. It is found in the book of the prophet Isaiah. And many have called it the chapter that shouldn't exist. Isaiah prophesied in the 8th century before Christ, during a time of political instability, rising empires, and spiritual decline in Judah. Assyria threatened from the north. Idolatry had infected the land. Judgment loomed. Yet in the middle of warnings and promises, Isaiah begins to speak of a mysterious figure, the servant of the Lord. Not a conquering general, not a political revolutionary, not a throne-seizing king, a servant. And when we arrive at Isaiah 53, the language shifts into something deeply personal, deeply prophetic, and deeply unsettling. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? The chapter begins with disbelief. Who would believe this message? Who would accept that God's power, His arm, would be revealed in weakness? He shall grow up before him like a tender plant, and like a root out of dry ground. This servant emerges from unlikely soil, no royal palace, no political advantage, like a fragile shoot pushing through hardened earth. He has no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. This is not how kings are described. There is no outward glory, no visible magnificence, nothing to naturally attract admiration. This alone challenges expectation, because humanity looks for strength in spectacle. God reveals strength in humility. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, not celebrated, rejected, not applauded, despised. This servant does not move through life untouched by pain. He is acquainted with grief, familiar with suffering, intimately aware of sorrow, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. People turn away, discomfort, embarrassment, rejection. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Here is the tragedy. The one sent to redeem is undervalued by those he came to save. Then the chapter shifts from description to revelation. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Now the suffering is explained. It was not random. It was not meaningless. It was substitution. He bore our griefs. He carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. Humanity misjudges the scene. We look at suffering and assume divine punishment. We see the servant wounded and conclude he is cursed. But Isaiah reveals something deeper. He was wounded for our transgressions, not his own, ours. He was crushed for our iniquities. The weight was not self-inflicted. It was transferred. The chastisement that brought us peace was upon him. Peace does not come cheaply. Justice must be satisfied. The punishment that should have fallen on us fell on him, and by his stripes we are healed. This is not superficial healing. It is spiritual restoration, reconciliation between humanity and God. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. Isaiah removes all exception, not some, all. We wander, we rebel, we choose our own path. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. This is the heart of Isaiah 53. The transfer. Guilt laid upon innocence. Sin placed upon righteousness. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Silence in suffering. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter. The imagery is unmistakable. Throughout Israel's history, lambs were sacrificed for atonement. Blood was shed for forgiveness. Now the servant becomes the lamb. And as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. No protest, no retaliation, submission. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. A miscarriage of justice. And who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. Cut off, executed, removed from life. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. Again, substitution. And they made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich in his death. Criminals in his execution. Wealth in his burial. This detail alone has caused countless readers to pause in astonishment. How could such specifics appear centuries before the event? Yet the chapter does not end in defeat. Yet it pleased the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. This does not mean cruelty. It means purpose. The suffering was not accidental. It was ordained. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days. How can someone, cut off from the land of the living, prolong his days? Death is not the end. There is life beyond suffering. Resurrection hope pulses beneath the text. And the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. The mission succeeds. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. The anguish achieves its purpose. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Justification. Declared righteous. Not because we earned it, but because he bore it. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Vindication. Honor after humiliation. Because he poured out his soul unto death. Total surrender. And he was numbered with the transgressors, counted among criminals. And he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Not only sacrifice, intercession, advocacy. This is why Isaiah 53 should not exist, because it stands centuries before the cross and yet describes its meaning. It explains suffering before the crucifixion happened. It reveals atonement before Calvary was built. It unveils resurrection before the tomb was sealed. Without Isaiah 53, the cross could be misunderstood as tragedy. With Isaiah 53, the cross becomes divine intention. Without Isaiah 53, suffering feels chaotic. With Isaiah 53, suffering becomes redemptive. Without Isaiah 53, justice and mercy seem irreconcilable. With Isaiah 53, they meet. This chapter confronts every reader, because it does not merely describe him, it describes us. All we like sheep have gone astray. The problem is universal, and so is the invitation. The servant suffers willingly. The innocent stands in place of the guilty. The righteous bears the sin of the unrighteous, and peace is offered. Isaiah 53 does not shout. It does not demand. It reveals. It stands quietly in the Hebrew Scriptures, centuries before Bethlehem, centuries before Calvary, whispering that redemption was always the plan, that suffering was never random, that love was never reactionary, that mercy was never accidental. 700 years before the cross, the blueprint was written. 700 years before the nails, the wounds were described. 700 years before the empty tomb, victory was declared. That is why Isaiah 53 is the chapter that shouldn't exist, because it refuses to be explained away. It bridges covenants. It anchors theology. It magnifies grace. It humbles pride. And it calls every generation to decide who has believed our report and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed. The answer to that question still echoes today. Isaiah 53, the chapter that shouldn't exist, long before Rome raised its crosses against the skyline, long before nails were driven through human hands, long before a crown of thorns was pressed into a bleeding brow, there was a scroll, not written in Greek, not written in Latin, but in ancient Hebrew ink on fragile parchment, carefully preserved by trembling hands. The wind moved through Jerusalem. Empires rose and fell like waves. Assyria thundered across nations. Babylon waited in the shadows. And in the midst of it all, a prophet stood. His name was Isaiah. He did not stand in Rome. He did not stand near a crucifixion. He did not watch a man carry a wooden beam. He stood 7 centuries earlier. And yet, he described something he should not have been able to see. The year is around 700 before Christ. There are no Roman soldiers in Judah, no crucifixions lining the roads, no Galilean carpenter preaching repentance. There is only tension, political instability, spiritual corruption, a people drifting from their covenant. Isaiah speaks of judgment. He warns of exile. He confronts kings. But then, something changes. His tone shifts. His words slow. He begins to speak of someone. Not a king clothed in gold, not a warrior riding a horse, not a conqueror lifting a sword. A servant, quiet, unassuming, almost hidden. Who has believed our report? The question hangs in the air like mist before dawn. Who would believe this? Who would accept a story that sounds like weakness but carries the weight of eternity? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? In Hebrew thought, the arm of the Lord meant power, strength, deliverance, victory. But Isaiah reveals something unsettling. The power of God would not be revealed through domination. It would be revealed through suffering. He shall grow up before him like a tender plant, like a root out of dry ground. Picture the desert, cracked earth, relentless sun, no sign of life. And then, a fragile green shoot emerges, unnoticed, uncelebrated, vulnerable. This is how the servant arrives, not with trumpets, not with armies, but quietly. He has no form or majesty that we should look at him, nothing outwardly spectacular, no royal glow, no dazzling beauty, just ordinariness. And when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Human expectation searches for spectacle. God reveals himself through humility. And then the tone darkens. He is despised and rejected by men. Rejected. The word feels heavy, turned away, dismissed, discarded. A man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. He does not observe suffering from a distance. He knows it. intimately. He walks with it, sleeps beside it, breathes through it. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. People cannot bear to look. Discomfort, embarrassment, denial. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. The one sent to rescue is undervalued by those drowning. And then Isaiah does something extraordinary. He pulls back the veil. Surely he has borne our griefs. Not his, ours, carried our sorrows. The suffering is not accidental, it is intentional. It is substitution. Yet humanity misunderstands. We esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. We assume he is cursed. We assume divine punishment. But Isaiah reveals a deeper reality. He was wounded for our transgressions, not for his wrongdoing, for ours. He was crushed for our iniquities. The weight falls on him. The chastisement that brought us peace was upon him. Peace requires payment. Justice demands satisfaction. And the payment is made by the servant. By his stripes we are healed. The wounds become medicine. The suffering becomes restoration. The blood becomes reconciliation. All we like sheep have gone astray. There is no exception, no spiritual elite, no innocent corner of humanity. We wander, we rebel, we choose our own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Imagine the transfer. Every lie, every betrayal, every hidden thought, every act of pride, placed upon one innocent figure. The silence grows deeper. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. No defense, no argument, no retaliation. Like a lamb led to the slaughter. The imagery is ancient. For centuries, lambs had been offered on altars. Blood spilled for sin. Now the servant becomes the lamb. And as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. The quiet is deafening. By oppression and judgment, he was taken away. A trial without justice, a verdict already decided. For he was cut off from the land of the living. Death, final, sudden, brutal. For the transgression of my people, he was stricken. Again, substitution. And they made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich in his death. Criminal execution, wealthy burial, specific, precise, unsettling. And yet, it does not end there. Yet it pleased the Lord to crush him. Not cruelty, purpose. When you make his soul an offering for sin, offering, sacrifice, atonement, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. How can one cut off from the land of the living prolong his days? There is something beyond death, a quiet hint of resurrection. The pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. The mission succeeds. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. The suffering achieves its aim. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many. Justify, declared righteous, because he bore their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, honor after humiliation, victory after vulnerability. Because he poured out his soul unto death, total surrender, and made intercession for the transgressors. Even in suffering, he advocates. Even in death, He intercedes. Now pause. 700 years before Rome. 700 years before Calvary. 700 years before an empty tomb. The blueprint was written. This is why Isaiah 53 feels like it shouldn't exist. It reads like history, but it was prophecy. It explains the cross before the cross happened. It reveals redemption before redemption unfolded. It whispers resurrection before the stone was rolled away. And that is where the tension remains. Because if this chapter is true, then history was not random. If this chapter is true, then suffering was not accidental. If this chapter is true, then love was planned. And if this chapter is true, then the story was written long before we entered it. And the question Isaiah asked at the beginning still echoes now. Who has believed our report? Imagine Jerusalem at dusk. Stone streets cooling beneath fading sunlight. Oil lamps flickering inside small homes. Priests finishing their duties at the temple. Somewhere in that ancient world, a scroll of Isaiah is unrolled, ink pressed into parchment, words carefully traced, generations reading the same lines. No one yet knows the full weight of them. Centuries pass, empires change, Babylon rises, Jerusalem falls, exile comes. Tears stain foreign soil. Still the scroll survives. Persia conquers Babylon. Cyrus allows the people to return. The temple is rebuilt. The words of Isaiah are still read. Then Greece rises. Alexander sweeps across the world. Culture shifts. Languages change. Still the scroll survives. Then Rome, iron discipline, military precision, crucifixions lining the roads as warnings. But remember, when Isaiah wrote, Rome was not a superpower. Crucifixion was not the symbol of empire. There was no Golgotha. And yet Isaiah 53 speaks of one pierced, crushed, cut off, silent before accusation. Now imagine a Jewish reader in the 1st century. He has grown up hearing Isaiah read in synagogue. He knows the servant songs. He knows the words by heart. And then he hears about a man from Nazareth, a teacher, a healer, a controversial rabbi. Crowds gather. Authorities grow uneasy. He speaks of the kingdom of God. He forgives sins. He challenges religious hypocrisy. And then, he is arrested at night. False witnesses. Political pressure. A Roman governor reluctant but calculating. The man stands silent. Accused. Beaten. Mocked. Silent. Isaiah's words begin to echo in memory. He opened not his mouth. The man is scourged. Leather whips laced with bone and metal tear into flesh. Stripes. Blood. By his stripes we are healed. He is led outside the city. Not alone. 2 criminals beside him, numbered with the transgressors. A wooden beam, a public execution. A sign above his head. Hands pierced, feet pierced, lifted up before a watching crowd. Isaiah had written, "He was pierced for our transgressions." The sky darkens. Some mock, some weep, some turn away. We hid our faces from him. Hours pass. Breath becomes labor. Life drains. He cries out, then silence. He was cut off from the land of the living. A soldier confirms death. A wealthy man requests the body. A new tomb, carved in stone, with the rich in his death. For those who knew Isaiah, the parallels would have been impossible to ignore. But Isaiah 53 is not merely prediction, it is explanation. Because crucifixion alone is tragedy. Isaiah tells us why. He bore our griefs. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is theological precision. The chapter introduces substitution at its deepest level. Throughout Israel's history, atonement required sacrifice. In the wilderness, a lamb without blemish. In the temple, blood on the altar. On the Day of Atonement, one goat slain, another sent into the wilderness, bearing the sins of the people. Sin transferred, guilt symbolically carried away. But Isaiah reveals something greater. Not animal sacrifice, personal sacrifice. The servant becomes both lamb and scapegoat, the innocent absorbing the guilt of the guilty. And here is where the chapter unsettles modern readers, because substitution offends pride. We prefer self-redemption, self-improvement, self-salvation. Isaiah says, "All we like sheep have gone astray." Not some, all. Every generation, every culture, every heart, gone astray. And the solution is not self-correction. It is surrender. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Imagine the weight of that phrase. Iniquity. Not merely mistakes. Rebellion. Moral failure. Hidden darkness. Laid upon him. The servant is crushed under accumulated human history. And yet, he does not resist. He opened not his mouth. Silence in the face of injustice is unnatural, unless the suffering is voluntary. Isaiah presents a willing servant, not a victim trapped by circumstance, but one who chooses obedience. He poured out his soul unto death, poured out, not taken, given. This is why Isaiah 53 feels like it shouldn't exist, because it reframes suffering as purpose. It suggests that before humanity nailed him to wood, he had already chosen the cross. Before betrayal, before arrest, before trial, the decision was already written into prophecy. And then comes the most mysterious turn. He shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. How can someone cut off from the land of the living prolong his days? Isaiah does not use the word resurrection, but the implication is undeniable. Death does not conclude the story. Suffering does not have the final word. The servant lives beyond it, vindicated, exalted. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great. Honor follows humiliation. Glory follows grief. The rejected becomes exalted. And history confirms something remarkable. The Roman Empire that crucified thousands eventually crumbled. The cross meant to shame became a symbol of faith across continents. The servant once despised is now worshipped by millions. Isaiah 53 did not disappear. It endured. In fact, in 1947, near the Dead Sea, shepherds discovered ancient scrolls hidden in caves for nearly 2,000 years. Among them, a complete copy of Isaiah, dating centuries before Jesus. The words were already there, untouched by later editing, unaltered by Christian hands. The chapter existed before the event it described. History preserved it. Time could not erase it. And so we return to the opening question. Who has believed our report? Isaiah knew disbelief would follow, because the message defies expectation, power through weakness, victory through suffering, life through death. The chapter should not exist because it confronts every worldview. To the skeptic, it demands explanation. To the religious, it demands humility. To the proud, it demands surrender. To the broken, it offers healing. It does not simply inform, it invites. And now, centuries later, we sit with the same question. If this chapter is true, then redemption was not reaction. It was design. If this chapter is true, then love was not sentimental. It was sacrificial. If this chapter is true, then the cross was not defeat. It was fulfillment. And perhaps the most cinematic truth of all, 700 years before a single nail was forged, before a single Roman soldier was born, before Bethlehem, God had already spoken. The servant would come. He would suffer. He would bear sin. He would die. He would live again. And he would justify many. The scroll was written. History unfolded. And Isaiah 53 still stands. Quiet, unmovable, uncomfortable. The chapter that shouldn't exist, but does. Now imagine the tension this chapter created long before Christianity ever existed. In ancient synagogues, Isaiah was read aloud. The Hebrew words carried weight. The rhythm of the poetry moved through the room like wind through stone corridors. And when the reader reached what we now call chapter 53, something in the atmosphere shifted. Because this servant does not behave like a king, Israel longed for deliverance. For centuries they had been ruled by empires: Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. Each empire stamped its image onto their land. Each empire reminded them they were not free. So when they spoke of Messiah, many imagined power, a son of David, a throne restored, enemies crushed, a kingdom visible and unshakable. But Isaiah describes no war horse, no sword, no political uprising. He describes rejection. He describes suffering. He describes humiliation. This is not the Messiah many were waiting for, and that tension still exists. Because suffering does not look like victory. Weakness does not look like divine power. Silence does not look like authority. And yet Isaiah insists that this is exactly how God would reveal his arm. The arm of the Lord, his strength, would be revealed through sacrifice. That reverses every human instinct. We associate power with dominance. God reveals power through surrender. We associate glory with applause. God reveals glory through obedience. And perhaps that is why Isaiah begins with disbelief. Who has believed our report? Who would accept that salvation comes not through force, but through a wounded servant? The imagery Isaiah uses is deliberate, like a root out of dry ground. Dry ground suggests hopelessness, barren land, no future, no expectation of life. And yet life emerges anyway. This is how redemption enters history, quietly, unexpectedly, without spectacle. When Jesus began his ministry, he did not emerge from a royal court. He came from Nazareth, a place so small it was questioned. Can anything good come from Nazareth? That question echoes the imagery of dry ground, nothing impressive, nothing that screams significance. And yet everything changes. Isaiah continues, and the emotional weight deepens. He is despised. Rejection wounds deeply. It cuts into identity. To be despised is to be dismissed as worthless. But the servant absorbs it, not because he deserves it, but because it is part of the path. He is a man of sorrows, not distant from human pain, not insulated from grief. He steps directly into it. He walks where we walk. He feels what we feel, and yet he carries more than his own sorrow. Surely he has borne our griefs. This is where Isaiah becomes intensely personal. Our griefs, our sorrows, not abstract suffering, specific burdens, the hidden shame no one else sees, the regret replayed in silence, the anxiety that presses on the chest in the middle of the night, the grief of loss, the guilt of failure. Isaiah says he carried it, not metaphorically, substitutionally. He was wounded for our transgressions. Wounded suggests penetration, injury inflicted. Crushed suggests weight, pressure applied until breaking. The servant is not merely inconvenienced, he is crushed. And yet the crushing is purposeful. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. Peace requires reconciliation. Reconciliation requires justice. Justice requires payment, and the payment falls on him. This is the mystery of the cross explained centuries before it occurred. Without Isaiah 53, the crucifixion can look like injustice alone. With Isaiah 53, it becomes justice satisfied and mercy extended. All we like sheep have gone astray. Sheep wander, they drift. They follow impulse rather than direction. Isaiah does not accuse angrily, he observes honestly. We stray. Every culture, every generation, every heart. And the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. Picture the transfer. A ledger filled with debts, names written in ink, charges listed in detail. And then the record moved, transferred, placed on one account. The innocent assumes the debt. This is why the servant remains silent, because he is not defending himself. He is fulfilling something, like a lamb led to the slaughter. The lamb imagery would have struck Isaiah's audience deeply. For centuries, lambs had been offered on altars. Blood signified atonement, life given for life. But animals could only symbolize. The servant embodies. He is the reality the sacrifices pointed toward. By oppression and judgment, he was taken away. Injustice is part of the design. False accusation, corrupt decision, public shame. He is cut off from the land of the living. Death enters the scene, and death seems final. But Isaiah refuses to end there. He shall prolong his days. Death cannot contain him. The narrative bends toward life again. Vindication follows suffering. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. Satisfied means the mission succeeded. The pain achieved its purpose. Nothing was wasted. By his knowledge, my righteous servant shall justify many. Justify means declared righteous. Not because they earned it, but because he bore it. He was numbered with the transgressors, counted among criminals, identified with the guilty, even though he was innocent. And he made intercession for the transgressors. Even in suffering, he advocates. Even in death, he speaks for others. This is not weakness. It is deliberate love. Now step back. 700 years before Roman crucifixion. 700 years before a carpenter's son walked the hills of Galilee. 700 years before a stone rolled across a tomb. The outline was written. Not vaguely, not symbolically alone, but with unsettling clarity. This chapter stands in the Hebrew Scriptures like a window opened toward the future. It explains the cross before it stands. It explains resurrection before the dawn breaks over an empty tomb. And this is why it unsettles so many. Because if Isaiah 53 is prophetic, then history is not accidental. If Isaiah 53 is intentional, then redemption was planned. If redemption was planned, then love preceded failure. Before humanity sinned openly, mercy was already prepared. Before betrayal, forgiveness was anticipated. Before the nails, grace was written. And that shifts everything. Because it means the story of salvation is not a reaction. It is revelation. The servant did not improvise redemption. He fulfilled it. And the question remains suspended in the air. Who has believed our report? The chapter does not force belief. It invites reflection. It invites humility. It invites surrender. And across centuries, readers continue to wrestle with it. Some see Israel in the servant. Some see a righteous remnant. Some see an individual Messiah. But the imagery refuses to fade. The suffering, the substitution, the silence, the vindication, the life beyond death. Isaiah 53 remains. Quiet on the page, thunderous in implication. The chapter that feels like it looks forward in time. The chapter that explains what had not yet happened. The chapter that shouldn't exist, and yet it does. There is something profoundly human about this chapter. It does not begin with triumph. It begins with disbelief. Who has believed our report? Isaiah understands something about the human heart. We struggle to accept salvation that does not flatter us. We resist rescue that requires confession. We prefer strength that looks like strength. But Isaiah 53 does not flatter humanity. It exposes us. All we like sheep have gone astray. That sentence levels the ground beneath every generation. Kings and peasants, scholars and laborers, religious leaders and skeptics, gone astray. Not partially lost, not slightly misguided, wandering. And wandering has consequences. Sin fractures trust. Sin corrodes peace. Sin isolates. The world Isaiah knew was not so different from ours. Political corruption, spiritual confusion, social injustice, fear of invasion, uncertainty about the future, different empires, same human condition. And into that condition, Isaiah speaks of a servant who does not avoid the mess. He enters it. He does not stand at a distance from suffering. He absorbs it. Surely he has borne our griefs. Notice the certainty. Surely. Not possibly. Not symbolically. Surely. He carries what we could not carry. There is a quiet beauty in that image. The weight of shame transferred, the burden of guilt lifted, the ache of failure placed upon stronger shoulders. But the beauty comes at a cost. He was crushed. Crushed is not gentle language. It suggests pressure, weight, force applied until breaking. And yet the crushing is not meaningless. It produces peace. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. Peace is often misunderstood as calm circumstances, but the peace Isaiah speaks of is deeper. It is reconciliation. It is the end of hostility between humanity and God. It is the quieting of accusation. It is the restoration of relationship. And that restoration required justice. This is where Isaiah 53 moves beyond emotion into theology. God is not indifferent to evil. He does not ignore injustice. He does not shrug at rebellion. If he did, he would not be just. But if he judged without mercy, hope would vanish. Isaiah reveals the meeting point. Justice satisfied, mercy extended, not by overlooking sin, but by absorbing it. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. That sentence alone could fill a lifetime of contemplation. Laid on him. The initiative is divine. The transfer is intentional. It is not humanity convincing God to forgive. It is God providing the means. And then there is the silence. He opened not his mouth. In a world obsessed with defense, justification, explanation, the servant remains silent. Why? Because his suffering is not accidental. It is purposeful. Silence here is strength. Silence here is obedience. Silence here is love. Imagine standing accused of crimes you did not commit. Imagine possessing the power to stop it and choosing not to, because stopping it would stop redemption, like a lamb led to the slaughter. The lamb does not resist, not because it lacks strength, but because sacrifice requires surrender. Isaiah's audience knew the cost of sacrifice. Blood on stone altars, smoke rising toward heaven, the smell of death in the courtyard of worship. They understood substitution through ritual. Isaiah reveals substitution through a person, and this person is not destroyed by death. He shall prolong his days. This line shifts the atmosphere. Death is not the final scene. The servant lives beyond the crushing, beyond the grave, beyond the silence. Vindication replaces humiliation. Honor replaces rejection. He shall divide the spoil with the strong. The language of victory emerges quietly. The rejected servant becomes the exalted one. History echoes this reversal. The cross, once a symbol of Roman terror, becomes a symbol of hope across cultures. The name once mocked becomes the name invoked in prayer. Empires fall. The words of Isaiah remain. And here is the deeper implication. If Isaiah 53 is true, then suffering is not ultimate. If Isaiah 53 is true, then failure is not final. If Isaiah 53 is true, then death does not win. Because the servant entered suffering and emerged victorious, not by avoiding pain, but by transforming it. There is something profoundly comforting in that. Human life is filled with grief. Loss is unavoidable. Disappointment visits every home. Isaiah does not promise a world without sorrow. He reveals a Savior acquainted with it, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. That phrase means familiarity. He does not observe pain from a throne. He walks through it. He feels it. He understands it. And because he bore our griefs, grief does not have the final word. Because he carried our sorrows, sorrow is not meaningless. Because he was crushed, crushing does not define us. Because he was cut off, we are not eternally separated. And because he prolonged his days, hope lives. This is why the chapter should not exist. It ties together threads that seem impossible to weave. Justice and mercy, suffering and victory, death and life, rejection and exaltation, weakness and divine power. It reveals a plan that predates the pain, a redemption that precedes the rebellion, a love that anticipated betrayal. Before a single Roman soldier raised a hammer, the story was written. Before a crown of thorns pressed into skin, the servant was described. Before a tomb was sealed, life beyond it was promised. And so the question remains, who has believed our report? Belief is not intellectual agreement alone. It is trust. It is surrender. It is allowing the weight you carry to be carried by another. Isaiah 53 does not demand applause. It invites reflection. It asks whether we will continue wandering like sheep or whether we will trust the shepherd who became the lamb. It stands across centuries, quiet but unmovable. A chapter written before the event it describes, a prophecy that reads like memory, a revelation that explains the cross before the cross existed, the chapter that should not exist, and yet it does. Now the night deepens, the scroll is rolled back, the ink has dried for centuries, but the words refuse to fade. Isaiah 53 does not shout for attention. It waits. It waits in ancient synagogues. It waits in desert caves beside the Dead Sea. It waits in fragile manuscripts guarded through exile and empire. And then history turns. A child is born in Bethlehem, not in a palace, not beneath banners of war, but quietly, like a root out of dry ground. He grows in obscurity. No royal education in Rome, no political alliances, no visible majesty that we should desire him. And when he begins to speak, the words carry authority. He heals the sick. He touches the untouchable. He forgives sins. And that is where the tension sharpens. Because forgiveness implies authority. Authority threatens power. Power reacts. Religious leaders grow uneasy. Crowds shift. Admiration turns into suspicion. Suspicion into hostility. He is despised, rejected, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. He weeps at graves. He feels betrayal. He experiences hunger, exhaustion, loneliness. He does not float above human pain. He steps into it fully. And then the final hours unfold. An arrest in darkness. A kiss of betrayal. Friends scattering into the night. False accusations. A trial conducted in haste. Silence in the face of lies. He opened not his mouth. Roman soldiers mock him. A crown pressed into flesh. A robe placed on bleeding shoulders. Laughter echoing in stone corridors. The arm of the Lord revealed not in lightning but in restraint. A crossbeam carried through narrow streets. A hill outside the city. Nails, wood, sky. Breath growing shallow. He is numbered with transgressors, the innocent placed between the guilty, and the world watches. Some mock, some mourn, some hide their faces. The sun darkens, the earth trembles. He cries out, then silence. He is cut off from the land of the living. The body is lowered, placed in a tomb that belongs to a wealthy man, with the rich in his death. A stone rolls into place, and it seems finished. But Isaiah had whispered something else. He shall prolong his days. The pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. The story does not end in a sealed grave. On the third day, something shifts. Stone moved, grave clothes folded, whispers spreading, fear turning into wonder, death interrupted, life emerging, the servant vindicated, the crushed one exalted. And suddenly, Isaiah 53 does not feel distant. It feels illuminated. The stripes, the wounds, the silence, the grave, the life beyond it. The prophecy reads like remembrance, but it was written before. That is what makes it breathtaking. The chapter did not evolve to fit the event. The event unfolded within the outline of the chapter. This is why it unsettles the skeptic, because coincidence feels insufficient. This is why it humbles the believer, because redemption was not improvised. It was intentional. But beyond history, beyond theology, beyond prophecy, there is something more intimate. Isaiah 53 is not only cosmic, it is personal. All we like sheep have gone astray. That includes the reader. That includes the listener. The wandering is not ancient alone. It is present. We wander into pride. We wander into self-reliance. We wander into hidden resentment. We wander into quiet despair. And the burden grows heavy. Guilt accumulates. Regret lingers. Fear whispers. Isaiah says the burden was transferred, laid on him. That means you do not carry it alone. That means the weight pressing on your chest has already been borne. That means the silence of shame has already been answered. He bore the sin of many. Many is wide enough to include you. He made intercession for the transgressors. Intercession means he stands between justice and judgment, between guilt and grace, between wandering and home. And this is where the chapter stops being distant prophecy and becomes living invitation. Who has believed our report? Belief is not passive. It is surrender. It is trust. It is placing your wandering into the hands of the shepherd who became the lamb. Isaiah 53 does not promise a life without suffering. It promises that suffering is not ultimate. It does not promise that grief will disappear. It promises that grief has been carried. It does not promise that death will never visit. It promises that death does not win. Because the servant entered it and walked out. And so we stand centuries later, holding the same scroll. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have shifted. Technology has transformed the world. But the human heart remains unchanged. Still wandering, still searching, still longing for peace. And Isaiah 53 still speaks, quietly, powerfully, unmovable. The chapter that should not exist, because it describes too much, explains too clearly, connects too perfectly. Yet it stands. Ink on parchment, prophecy before fulfillment, suffering before the cross, life beyond the grave, and the question remains suspended across time. Who has believed our report? If the answer is yes, then the wandering can end. The burden can lift. The silence of shame can break. Peace can enter, not because we earned it, but because he was crushed for it. Not because we achieved it, but because he carried it. This is the servant, This is the suffering. This is the substitution. This is the vindication. This is Isaiah 53, the chapter that shouldn't exist, but does. And because it does, hope does too.